Hello, dear audience. Thank you so much for joining us today on another episode of Hour of Healing. I am your weekly host, Joe Deborah. And as always, we on this show are dedicated to bringing you life-changing and thought-provoking conversations and topics that are engineered not just for your physical health, but also for your spiritual health, your emotional health, or mental health, some will call it. And today we have a good one. We have with us today Dr. Carl Rothschild, who is a career chiropractor. He is currently an author and also a very, very interesting man to get to know. But we will be talking about red light therapy today, what all the buzz is about. Yes, red light therapy. Is it all that they say it is, or there is less or more to it? Dr. Carl is here to help us with that. Personally, I have referred patients to have red light therapy before, but mostly when I send people for red light therapy, it is to treat things like acne or dermatologic disorders. But Dr. Carl is here to help us to understand how it actually works and if there is more that it can do for us. So I can't wait for us to get into the conversation today, but I want to bring in Dr. Carl so he'll give us a brief background of himself and then we will get going. Dr. Carl, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I love talking about healing and well-being and chiropractic, and particular red light therapy. So I started as a chiropractor in 1978. So I was a bit of a hippie of sorts, my version. My feeling was that I wanted to really focus on healing more than I wanted to focus on making money. I don't
Mm,
mind making
mm,
money, but if I were to make money and not heal people at the same time, or help people at least, that wouldn't work for me.
mm,
So I
mm.
started, as I say, like 47 years ago as a chiropractor. And, I feel like to take care of yourself is very important. People don't
Correct.
realize how horrible and how expensive it is to be sick when you're younger.
Mm, mm.
And I always tell people, I want you to think about when you're 30, what would your 80-year-old self say to you? And there's a
Wow.
possibility your 80-year-old self would say, would you stop doing that, whatever you're doing, and start taking care of yourself? Because there's some people who foolishly think it's about today. It's just about today.
Mm,
I'm living for
mm.
today. You hear that a lot. And what
Yes.
they don't realize is whatever they're doing today, it's like their bank account. If you're not taking care of your finances today, you
Mm,
won't have any later on. And if you're
true.
not taking care of your health today, in a sense, you won't have that later on either. So
Mm,
about
mm,
26 years ago, give or take, there was a relatively famous orthopedic surgeon and professor out of USC out here in California. And I knew him. I knew
mm.
him before he decided to tell me, hey, you should take this light and shine it on people and it'll make a big difference. And I could see my eyes rolling in my head already. You're going to go, oh, yeah, right. At that point, I'd been in practice for 20 years. I felt like I knew everything. And the truth
Mm,
of the matter is, I let him convince me to at least try it. And
mm,
wouldn't you know, it revolutionized my practice. I was able to do things in my practice I never dreamt of before. So this lady
mm.
goes, you helped my brother so much with his shoulder with that laser. At that time we were using lasers.
Okay.
Um, can you help me with my gum disease? Gum
Mm.
disease? I, I'd never worked on somebody's gum disease before, and I'm
Gum
not a
disease.
dentist.
Okay.
But there's one thing we know for sure, that the lights could not hurt. Couldn't hurt. So let's try it.
Mm,
And wouldn't you know, we helped her with her gum disease, and this person with their kidneys, and this person
mm.
with a ripped Achilles tendon, and every muscle, tendon, ligament, bone, joint, everything we were helping significantly. And I want you to know that the equipment we had back 26 years ago was
Mm.
thousands and thousands of times weaker than what we have now.
What you have
And yet
today.
we still had reasonably good results even back then.
Wow. Wow.
Then about 13 years ago, give or take, it was discovered that there was an element of light energy in the red range that can
Mm-hmm.
actually help with shrinking fat cells.
Mm.
Now, I know how important fat loss is to a lot of people. In this country, the United States, I should say, there are now advertisement commercials every hour, probably several, about these injections that people can practically do to themselves, um,
True.
that was originally, this was medication for diabetics.
Correct.
And now they have gone crazy with this, the GLP injections, little taking into consideration the side effects. But I don't want to go there with that. But it just wanted to reflect how important fat loss in the United States is. And
True.
I knew 13 years ago, when it was discovered that red light could do this in a healing, but also natural way, non-invasive, not putting anything in the body or yanking anything out,
Mm.
I said, I'm in. And that's when I started getting involved with manufacturing. And we manufactured lasers and pads and stuff like that. And we had, at the time, what I would consider reasonably good results. But
Okay.
the truth of the
Okay.
matter is, about 5 years ago, COVID hit. And our practitioners wanted less physical contact between the patient and the provider.
Mm.
And we came up with the bed. Now, normally my background would have a picture of my bed right there. So I want you to imagine our Trifecta Light Bed right there.
Okay.
And we built the bed as a substitute of what we had been using or manufacturing up to that point. And just with the no expectations, other than the fact that with the bed, you don't need staff. So the
Mm.
patient can get in and out of the bed themselves. They get in the bed, they get out of the bed, they walk by the front desk and say, I'll see you at the next appointment, because they've already paid in advance and they've already
Mm.
scheduled in advance. And within a month of us having distributed a bunch of these beds in the beginning, we started getting feedback that was unbelievable.
Wow.
People
Wow.
were talking about things that we had no idea. So this one guy had a rare autoimmune disease,
Okay.
and it was called Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease.
Okay.
I don't know why it's called that, but it's an
It was the
autoimmune
one who
disease.
discovered it.
Yeah, probably. So, but what it meant was that he was guaranteed pain every day. This was 15 years so far, and he couldn't walk.
Mm.
And after 6 visits with the bed, and he wasn't using it for that. He was getting in the bed for other reasons.
Okay.
But after
Okay.
6 visits, he's walking, no more pain. And it was
Wow.
like,
Wow.
whoa. Then we got a guy, again, this was a total surprise. He calls up one of our practitioners and explains to the practitioner that he's having heart attacks
Mm.
once a week, if not
Wow.
twice a week.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and the practitioner then calls me up and says, this guy wants to come in tomorrow, but I'm scared to even have him come in. I don't want him having a heart attack in my office. And I said, we know it couldn't hurt. So why don't we just treat him for 5 minutes, stay in the room the whole time, and see what happens? And by the way, that was almost 2 years ago, had now hundreds of heart attacks up until that point. 12 years of once a week, if not twice a week, heart attacks. And what they
Mm.
had done 12 years ago, give or take, or 13 years ago, whatever, they had implanted a defibrillator, but he was
Interesting.
dying. By the time
Interesting.
we met him, he was not doing well. He had no
Wow.
energy. Every organ and gland in his body was struggling and suffering.
Mm.
He had erectile
Mm.
dysfunction. He had all kinds of stuff. And he was an athlete prior to this whole thing happening. So he
Wow.
wanted to walk around the block, and he would talk about how these little old ladies in their walkers would zoom, relatively speaking, zoom past him because he
Mm.
could barely shuffle around the block.
Wow.
And after just a short period of time with the bed, no more heart attacks, no
Wow.
more heart attack. And
Wow.
everything has come back to life. His blood pressure is normal, his pulse is normal, his erectile dysfunction is gone.
Wow.
And his
Wow.
energy is, as he described it, through the roof.
Mm.
And he's talking about not walking, but running. So he would run or walk fast to what he normally would want to walk to. And then he had still so much energy, he would walk around the yard where he would go
Mm.
to
Mm.
several times.
Wow.
And it just changed his life. And believe me, we did not expect this.
Wow.
But what we learned from this whole thing
Mm-hmm.
is that when you bathe the whole body at the same time, that's when you're going to see these unbelievable results.
Wow.
You have
Wow.
to have coverage from head to toe, front and back, left and right, and inside and out to get it to affect as many cells in the body as possible to get these amazing results with
Mm.
dementia, with
Mm.
Parkinson's, with multiple sclerosis, with
Wow.
autoimmune diseases, including rheumatoid arthritis. Just one thing after another after another. We had this guy, Steve. Now, Steve contracted Lyme disease when he was 12, and it absolutely ruined his childhood. It ruined his education and social life.
Mm.
And of course, it ruined his career, which he
Mm.
couldn't get one. He would talk. He was hating his life, to be honest with you. He had no energy, and this was going on for 40 years before we met him. So
Mm.
he was in his
Mm.
50s when he gets into one of our beds, gets a treatment, gets out of the bed, and now what I'm going to ask your audience to do is you're going to send them the recordings that I'm going to forward to you, and then listen to the one that Steve does. And just, I mean, it gives you chills to hear
Mm.
the kind of conversation that people have. And again, if you are anything like me, we're helping people that you love or don't even
Correct.
know, but certainly people
Correct.
that you do know. Wouldn't it be a smart idea to at least try this? The important thing I want to mention here is that we have never seen a recorded side effect in the entire time for
Mm.
50 years that they've studied this technology.
Wow.
And
Wow.
there really isn't any contraindication. In other words, who shouldn't get in the bed?
Mm.
And there's
Mm.
only a couple of legal reasons not to get in bed, but there's no real reason not to get in bed. And the legal
Interesting.
reason is we know that the lights would be unbelievably helpful for the mother and the fetus of a pregnant woman. But
Mm.
if that baby comes out anything other than perfect, having nothing to do with our bed, they're going to want to blame somebody. And I tell everybody, let's not be in that neighborhood. But really, as far as metal implants or electronics, pacemaker, defibrillator, back TENS units, things like that, that they've implanted in people, or shoulder or hip or knee replacements and things like
Mm.
that, they're not contraindication indicated.
Mm. So, Dr. Carl,
Yeah.
you've given us some powerful examples in your introduction, and I want our audience to be able to follow along with us. So, let's first talk about red light therapy and how it works at a cellular level. These results that you've been seeing sounds remarkable and really impressive. I mean, to be able to walk again, run again, have your life back, we would say, that is very important, and I believe it will be important for everybody. But what is red light therapy itself, and how does it work at the cellular level as you are describing to us? Mm.
Okay, let's talk about how it works. Now, there are two completely different mechanisms. And by the way, as with anything, they almost never know why something works in the beginning.
Mm.
Again, the only
Mm.
instructions I got 26, 27 years ago was that it couldn't hurt. But that's
Mm.
about all they knew. They knew it couldn't hurt, but they weren't positive yet of why and how it worked.
True.
So first I want to talk about what happened with fat loss. And that was only discovered a little over a dozen years ago. And certainly they didn't know why the heck it worked back then. But in the interim, they have now discovered why it works. And what they found, they thought maybe the element of red light would have actually either emulsified or liquefied or did something to make the fat more liquid so it would ooze out of the fat cell. That's not what happened. So what they
Mm.
found was that the fat cell wall becomes more porous and
Mm.
allows the contents to leak out.
To leak out. Okay.
And it only
Okay.
happens for a very short period of time. So you're not damaging anything. You're not freezing the fat, boiling the fat. You're not
Mm.
using ultrasonic cavitation or radio frequency. All of those are about destroying fat cells, bursting them and destroying them. Someone has a notion that we were put together with a bunch of parts that we don't really need. That's not what chiropractors are thinking about. Chiropractors believe that the body was actually put together pretty well. And when we
True.
start playing around with it and adding things that shouldn't be there or pulling things out that should be there, or in this case, destroying, injuring, or whatever, we don't do any of that stuff. All that
Mm.
happens is for about 24 hours is the fat cell wall becomes more porous, allows some of the contents to leak out. And then with our unique protocol, we move the fat away from the fat cells and eventually
Mm.
to the liver for use or elimination. And it's simple as that.
Okay. Okay.
And it works. So if we
Mm.
pair up a smart diet which is not highly restrictive. If you could put somebody on a diet that's outrageously restrictive, they'll do it for 2 weeks, but they can't stay on it. Maybe they'll do it long enough to lose the weight, but then when they go off of that diet, they put it all back on and more. What the ideal kind of weight loss program is one where the person can maintain and sustain that diet for the rest of their lives.
True.
That's what you want. So you want to have somebody who goes on a type of a diet that can be, that's doable. And so we're looking at something that what we call calorically neutral, which limits, if not eliminates, the 4 factors that are really tough on fat loss. One is starchy carbohydrates. I mean,
Okay.
when you look at a bowl of pasta, as far as the body's concerned, it's like looking at a bowl of sugar. You wouldn't eat a bowl of sugar, but people
True.
eat bowls of pasta all the time. So that's one factor. The other one is simple sugars, which is obviously full of sugar. The next one is soda, which is also full of sugar. And the final
True.
one is alcohol. Now, alcohol is the worst of all of those, because the way alcohol is processed by the body is very unique. And it creates an upset so that the likelihood of you being able to lose weight and drink alcohol at the same time is almost impossible.
True.
Now, there are other reasons that people can't lose the weight, like hormonal problems and things like that. But when you
Yes.
pair this smart diet that I'm describing with the red light, even people who have hormonal issues, we've seen very beautiful, nice results.
Mm.
So that's about fat loss. It's not the miracles that I love, but it's about fat loss. You're going to
So,
ask me,
Carl, I like how you talked about how it works with fat loss, but let's talk about pain and inflammation. You did mention that in your intro. How does it help with that? What is the science behind the red light therapy helping with things like that? Sleep is something that a lot of people deal with, sleep disorders, circadian rhythm disorders. And in your book, Illuminated Healing, you do mention that in there. So can you talk about that also? And then we will get into the difference between the red light and the near infrared light, if that's okay with you.
so in order for me to explain how it works, I need to explain to you about infrared, near
Sure.
infrared, and far infrared. So first of all, when I use the term red light therapy, I am talking about the integration of red and near infrared together. So we'll
Okay.
put that aside. So if you hear me say red light, I'm not really talking about just red light.
Okay.
So now let's get back to infrared. So infrared is really, there's no such thing as just infrared, either far infrared or near infrared. Now, far infrared is a fancy way of getting deep penetrating heat, and that's about it. You're not going to see any long-term cellular changes. It's the near infrared that does the miracles. And I wanted to make sure we were clear on that. In our bed and our equipment, we've always integrated red light with near infrared, which then we
Okay.
call red light therapy.
Okay.
Red light is just that, red. And red is mostly about fat loss, and it does a little bit with healing as well.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So now let's go over to my miracle wavelength of near infrared.
Okay.
It's the one that will make the following changes, and I will finally answer your question, and now you won't be upset with me. So here's what happened. So again, it was started 50 years ago. They coined the word photobiomodulation. Photo meaning light, bio meaning tissue, modulation means it does something. And NASA and a few other countries were studying this. And the term photobiomodulation has to do with the fact that light affects the tissues in some way. They weren't sure how and what way and which wavelengths were most effective. We now know the effect of wavelengths. So, but still, it was years and years later until they finally realized, what's this all about? And what it's about is going to surprise some people, and it's about the mitochondria of the body. So when I went to school, I learned that there was one mitochondria in every cell of your body. It's not true. In some cells of the body, there are over 5,000 mitochondria in each one of the cells. So much so that mitochondria is so prevalent in the body that it makes up 10% of your body weight. So we know that mitochondria is very critical. So
Correct.
again, the mitochondria is in every cell. What's that got to do with what I'm talking about? It's all about mitochondria and sunlight.
Okay.
Just those 4 elements of sunlight that I described two red, two near infrared wavelengths. We're not dealing with blue light that screws up the circadian rhythms. We're not dealing with UV light, nothing like. We're dealing just with these four miraculous wavelengths for fat loss, for healing, for mental health, for all kinds of wonderful, beautiful things. So again, let's get to the nitty gritty now. It makes sense, right? We're on the planet. There's a sun. Boom. It can affect plants. We see the plants and trees. We know that the sun is critical for plants and seeds to exist, trees to
Correct.
exist. Well, guess what? It's just as important for us to exist. And without
Very
any
true.
sun, we'd be dead. Not only we'd be dead because we couldn't eat any vegetables, or there would be none of that existing, but the light actually affects certain tissues in our body that are photosensitive. And one of those photosensitive elements is called cytochrome C oxidase. Now, cytochrome
Right.
C oxidase is an enzyme
True.
that is triggered by sunlight or by our near infrared and red lights. And we can so much stimulate the cytochrome C oxidase in the mitochondria, in the wall of the mitochondria, to bring the mitochondria back to normal. So what does mitochondria do? Mitochondria is called the powerhouse of the body.
True.
Mitochondria produces the energy currency of the body, which is called ATP.
Yes.
And if you have ATP, you can do all the functions in your body, including healing, including moving, including thinking, brain, nervous system, chemicals, all these things require energy, and that energy is given to the body by the means of ATP. So it starts in the mitochondria by being stimulated by the cytochrome C oxidase. The mitochondria now comes back to life. The mitochondria then produces this glorious thing called ATP. The ATP then brings life back to your body. And it's
Wow.
as complicated and yet as simple as what I just described. So what we've done is we mimic the sunlight, but we magnify that sunlight by many, many times and then drive it into the person's body. 50 years of studying this technology, there's never been a recorded side effect. So the worst that'll happen with anybody if they try this technology is nothing. That's the worst. And that so rarely happens. So I'm going to challenge all of you, if you have an ailment, get in the bed for 6 visits. It's 3 times a week, 12 minutes of session. I'm not in practice, so I'm not inviting you to my office, but I'm going to tell you how you can find out which location is closest to you and just try it. 6 visits. I don't care what you have. I don't care if it's dementia. I don't care if it's Parkinson's. I don't care what you have. Try it for 6 visits and see if you don't see a difference. So we had a lady that had a stroke. And after just 1 visit, she knew there was something powerful here. And after 8 visits, she no longer had any indication of having a stroke. In fact, she felt better and was better than she was before she ever had the stroke. Now, did we expect that? Not really. We didn't not expect it. We just didn't know. But this was years ago. So now we know, hey, you had a stroke, get in the bed. And in fact, I had a staff member make this mug for me. Can you read that?
Get into bed.
That's my attitude. Would you just get in the bed and just see? I mean, you can see I'm out of my mind. I'm crazy about this stuff. I started in the 70s as a hippie. I wanted to help people. And I always did, but not to this extent. Now, the thing that we hear more than ever is thank you for giving me my life back. So do you understand now the mechanism that I'm talking about? 2 very different mechanisms. One's about fat loss. It's pretty simplistic, changing the fat cell wall, allowing the contents to leak out. And with our protocol, moving the fat away from the fat cells. That's number 1. Number 2, on the other side is the more of the near infrared, but also some red light, has to do with healing. And it has to do with treating. And it has to do with the mitochondria that's stimulated by the sun, or in this case, our lights, which stimulates the cytochrome C oxidase, which stimulates the mitochondrial activity to produce the ATP, which is the energy currency of the body, which allows your body to function. So a lot of diseases are caused by mitochondrial dysfunction.
Mm.
They didn't
Mm.
know all this just not that many years ago. So now there's books on mitochondrial dysfunction. There's a disease called mitochondrial dysfunction. And guess what I'm going to recommend for that person that has mitochondrial dysfunction? Would you like
Get
to
in the
take a
bed.
guess what I'm going to recommend?
Get in the bed.
Get in the bed. Are you kidding me?
Thank you so much, Dr. Carl. This is certainly and truly fascinating things that you are sharing with us today on Hour of Healing on red light therapy. I want to ask you one question based on some of the things that I was noting down here. So, in your explanation of how this works, you did talk about how using the red light and the near infrared, you're able to harness the energy, or technically mimic the sunlight energy, and magnify it to the body. That kind of bring up some of the common things that I hear about red light therapy, that you need high heat to get any benefit. Can you share some light on that?
That person is so wrong. I don't even know where to go with that. So heat is the absolute enemy. Heat is the last thing that you want. When we first developed these 26 years ago, we called it cold light therapy or cold laser or something like that. And it was not that it literally was cold, but it wouldn't get hot. So what's the problem with heat is that it dilates blood vessels. It brings more fluid to the surface that would
Correct.
block the penetration of light, and we would not have nearly the kind of success that we have. What you want is equipment that has the highest medical grade lights possible that are very strong but not hot. But also you want equipment that can be customized. So someone who's 80 pounds is not getting the same dose as someone who's 400 pounds. A
Correct.
400 pounder can absorb a ton of this energy without it getting hot because they have a lot of flesh to absorb that. And the 80 pounder, we'd have to set it and customize the treatment for that 80 pounder to lower the amount of power. But we also can pulse the wave in our bed. Now, pulsing the wave allows for two things. One, by pulsing the wave, you actually dissipate some more of the heat, so you can have even more power. And number two, even more importantly, is a thing called resonating frequencies. Now, some of you have heard about frequency healing, have heard about PEMF, have heard about different things that utilize light therapy and pulsations to actually affect different tissues of the body. So our bed allows us to pulse the wave, customize the treatment. Another thing is you want to make sure that the lights come as close to the body as possible. As the lights come away from the body, you lose power exponentially. So our top canopy, as it comes down, comes right down onto the person's body. So heat is the enemy. And anybody that tells you you need high heat is wrong. I don't know what else to say. It's the
Wonderful.
exact opposite of what the truth is.
Wonderful.
So I want to mention some things. Number one, for learning more information, but also find a location close to you, you would go to the website, which is trifectalight.com. Trifecta stands for skin, fat, and healing. That was originally our notion. It could help skin unbelievably, it can help with fat, and it can help with healing. There are several other factors and divisions of the company, but we'll talk about that later. So that's where the trifecta word comes from. So it's Trifecta Light, Light.com. That's number one. Number two, if you get a chance, go to YouTube. Put in the word Trifecta Light Official in one phrase. It's not, no spaces in between. Trifecta Light Official, and you will see over 100 really well done videos. Really, I'm very proud of that YouTube channel that we have. So we talked about the website, the channel. I also want to recommend that people learn about Google Scholar. If you just go to Google and put in the word Google Scholar, it'll take you there. And it'll look just like Google. But you want to go to this often. You put in the phrase red light therapy, and you will see probably over 3.5 million entries. These are double-blind studies, research papers, articles, and all kinds of stuff. Then you can filter it down to whatever is important to you, whether it's lupus or whatever you want to put in there, and see all the research that was done on those particular things. So again, when you go to the website, by the way, also the reason to go to the Trifecta Light website is to find a location closest to you. So there's in the home page, you'll see a thing which says, find the location closest to you. On the other hand, some of you might want to buy one of these beds. Now, some people have more money than health, and they'll buy it for their home. But most of you who are going to buy it are for business, and it is a phenomenal way of attracting a lot more people to your business. If you're into fitness world, the health world, the beauty world, the weight loss world, you would definitely benefit from something like this, a full body red light therapy. So when you go there, it'll ask you, do you want to buy a bed or you want to learn about it? And that's another thing that we can get a sales rep to talk to you about, how great this is and maybe whether it makes sense to incorporate it into your practice. And I wanted to mention about athletes real quick.
Sure.
If you're an athlete, a serious athlete, and let me give you an example of an athlete that has been playing tennis all the way through the ranks. They started when they were a kid, and they were always going up against a couple of other kids that are same age, same bracket, and that sometimes they win, sometimes the other guy wins, blah, blah, blah. If they're using the red light bed, it will take them to a whole nother level. Their ability to compete at that point will be far better. Their stamina will be better. They'll jump higher. Their recovery will be unbelievably faster. So that's why we have NBA teams that have our bed. The Track and Field Olympic Training Center had our bed, and it was fantastic for them.
Wonderful.
We have videos. One of them is a pole vaulter that it enhances her ability to excel much better. We have two major athletic centers in Florida and in other states as well. So the athlete, if you're not using a full body red light bed, you're making a mistake. So at any rate, listen, I'm having a lot of fun, healing and watching people. The thing that we hear more than ever is thank you for giving me my life back. And I love
Wonderful.
that. I absolutely love that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Carl. We will be wrapping up here, but you were able to share some of the resources with our audience. I want to ask about how to use the red light therapy for best results. And I think that would be a good segue for us to be able to wrap our section today. Can you share with our audience how they can use whether these beds or any of the facilities, how many sections they should plan on going once they find an area and things of that nature?
The answer is always the same. I've been a chiropractor for 40 years, and patients always ask me, how many visits is it going to take, and is it permanent? And the answer is always the same. It's 3 times a week. Each session is 12 minutes until we reach a goal.
Okay.
So let's say the goal is for fat loss, or let's say the goal is for better range of motion or get over some condition or whatever. We do 3 times a week until we reach the goal. Now, sometimes once we reach the goal, like a guy like myself, I'm 72 years old. So I'm going to get into bed 3 times a week for the rest of my life, because I tell my patients life and death is about like being like a candle that burns really bright all the way from the top to the bottom, stays bright, and then sputters out and dies. Not spending the last 20 years of your life in a wheelchair, not being able to feed yourself, not being able to bathe yourself, and not being able to wipe yourself, not being able to communicate, not being ambulatory, so you can't get in the car, you can't do anything. I don't want that. I would have patients coming to my office every once in a while. I didn't say it out loud, but I couldn't help but thinking to myself, God, please don't let me wind up like that. Because that person didn't take care of themselves. And you know why people don't take care of themselves? Sometimes it's because they're not scared enough. So get scared. Don't wind up crippled. And try to do the best you can. Take care of yourself. I'm not going to go political here, but when you watch a movie, James Bond, anything, they all drink. Having a drink in the hand, and of course, at one time a cigarette in your hand was the other one, but forget about cigarettes. Having a drink was part of being cool. And Trump was one of the first ones that said, I'm cool, whether you do believe that or not. And I don't drink. I've never drank, and he doesn't smoke. Well, I'm the same way. I'm not going to put anything in my body that I know can harm me. I'm not interested in that. Well, I got scared way earlier than most of you, but get scared, or in some way maybe just get motivated to take care of yourself, because I would hate for you to wind up a mess. But I'll tell you, you know why it's not emphasized? Where do you think the money is? In healthy people or sick people? There's no money in healthy people. Doctors are not going to make a dime out of you if you're going to be healthy. You're not going to be going to the hospital. You're not going to get surgery. Who needs you? And then, then if you're smart, I would think that you would go in a maintenance program. If you're young enough, after you reach your goal, it might only be once a week or once a month. I don't know. But, continuing to take care of yourself. It's not like you just breathe oxygen a couple of times a year and say, yeah, that's enough. You're breathing good oxygen you're drinking smart water, you're brushing your teeth more than once a year, you're taking care of yourself on a regular basis because you don't want to lose your teeth, and you're taking care of yourself because you don't want to lose your health. And
Correct.
that's important.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Carl, and thank you so much, dear audience, for joining us. This has been a very fascinating conversation with Dr. Carl Rothschild. I want to echo that he is also an author. You can find his book, Illuminated Healing, on Amazon. And so I wanted to make sure I shared that with you for you to look him up, be able to get this resource, read the book. The information in there is very fascinating. But this was a very fascinating conversation. Who can benefit from red light therapy? Athletes, people with chronic pain, arthritis, skin conditions, looking to boost their energy. Dr. Carl did share all these with us. And so, two things I want to remind you he wants you to remember today. Get scared about your health and get in the bed. Thank you so much for joining us today on Hour of Healing. As always, it's our pleasure to be able to bring you life-changing conversation and information. We look forward to joining you again next week with another thought-provoking and life-changing topic. I am your host, Joe Deborah. God bless you. We will see you same time next week. Bye-bye.